Okay, let's start talking about the research example. Difference Matters, Embodiment of and Discourse on Differences at an Urban Public High School by Anita Chikader. The major topic in this research are about gender identities and racial identities and how the high school students and teachers communicate on related topics. Let's start with the research purpose. On page 1, the author listed 4 research questions. How did students and teachers understand the nature of social categories? Which categories of identities were seen as being immutable and which ones were seen as choices and therefore changeable? Which ones were seen as natural or biological in origin? How were participants' experiences and perceptions of racialized difference influenced their experience and perceptions of gender or sexualities? However, the literature review part was missing in this paper. So even though the research questions are understandable, and in general, we know that they came from the topic of social justice, it is hard to tell from the paper itself how exactly these questions were developed and what have been done in related field. The author mentioned that she used cultural theories of social identities and identify formation as theoretical background, but again, without an elaboration on the theory in the paper, it is hard to see how she applied the theories. About data collection, um, the author really collects a lot of information. On page 83, the author provided a general demographic description of the town as background, and on page 84, the author provided more specific institutional context as a description of the place. It introduced when the research was conducted, what classes were observed, and some information about the teachers. So I'd say she had enough information to help us make sense of the place. And also, as I said, she spent a lot of time there. She spent 2 years in field observation. The first round of the pilot study was from 2005 to 2006, and then the major study was observed. The major data was collected from 2006 to 2007. And also, she uses different methods to collect data, including participant observation, interviews, and documentary collection. So, with such a long time and a mixed method for data collection, I believe the author had rich information about the students and teachers' behaviors in order to make sense and find the patterns. About positionality, the author did not introduce herself besides that she was a participant observer. So I have to say this part is kind of missing. And about how she analyzed the data. She had a lot of examples, stories, and quotes, and organized them into 3 major themes, that is race, gender, and a case study on Black male students. The process, she mentioned that the first initial coding was used in vivo versionate, and then she said the subsequent runs analysis was done by hand. I guess it's she writing down notes or use Microsoft Word, I guess, so that she can put different quotes into under different themes. Here comes to the findings. First, about race. Are there biological differences or it's just as social differences? So the finding section start with an example of students have a screenplay and that students have difficult with relate to people who are in different color. Also, it indicated that students in general related skin colors with different race and believe there are generally white, black, and yellow. Also, they strongly believe that there are certain personalities and traits related to different ethnic groups. The next few paragraphs talked about how students identified themselves and in a more nuanced and specific way. But at the same time, the way they identified themselves were also influenced by official census. Then the author discussed the developmental and the contextual changes of self-identification. And then she found that although students complained about having racial and ethnic identities mistakenly ascribed to themselves, they were not more sensitive to their stereotype of other students. The stereotype was actually reinforced in everyday conversations. So the conclusion was racial differences exist, but it's not a generic difference. It was socially constructed. I personally don't think this part has a strong argument on this conclusion, although it mentioned a lot of different conversations among students and teachers, but it did not cite any research from biological anthropology or related such kind of research to support that there is no significant differences among racial on the genetic level. The next topic is about gender identities. The author started with how students and teachers discussed the gender differences in class and the idea that gender differences are natural and biological was routinely reinforced. Even though it was actually quite complicated, the binary idea